All right, everybody, welcome back to another week of the Lasting Learning Podcast. If this is your first time, you picked a good time to join us because our guest today is absolutely incredible. If you are returning to this episode or to this podcast, you're in for a real treat because we just keep getting better and better and better. Today, we've got a guest who I'll just be real. He's from Ohio, but we're not going to use that against him. He's made it very clear he's not a real Buckeye, but he does live in the state of Ohio. But he's an amazing, amazing guy. For those of you in education, it's going to be a guy that you're very familiar with. For those of you who might not be in education after today, I'm hoping that you're just going to take some things away because he's a dad. He's a social media, I'm going to call him an expert. He's a business aficionado. I mean, he's got a lot going on. So today's guest is Jeff Gargas, joining us from Ohio. Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, David. Kind of talked me up there. I'm not sure I could live up to anything except for the Ohio guy thing.
Well, see, I threw the Ohio thing out there just in case this is a complete dud. People will understand why.
I get it. That's good. It's a good setup. Protecting yourself. That's
you go.
Good.
You got to have that little hedge around yourself. So Jeff, I appreciate you joining us. I know you just got done dropping kids off at school, and you found some time to meet with us today. Do you mind just introducing yourself to those people out there that might not know who you are or what you do?
Sure. Yeah. So I appreciate you having me on, Dave. This is awesome. Wanted to say first, congrats on your book. It's doing awesome. Seeing nothing but just amazing reviews. Love the podcast. So really appreciate being on here. So as you said, I'm from Ohio. So I actually live about 30 minutes south of Cleveland in a town called Stowe, which is basically Akron, Ohio. So if you're a fan or not, it's where LeBron James is from. So that's where I live now. I am a dad. I just dropped my two kids off, walked them over to school. My daughter's in kindergarten, so she's still getting used to the whole crowded thing. So she was a little weird again this morning. So it took me a little longer to get back. And my son's in second and could care less whether I'm around anywhere. But let's do that. So I'm a dad and husband first. And I work with a team called Teach Better Team. And we do a lot of stuff. We work with teachers and school districts all around the country, providing professional development and training. We do that in a wide variety. We create a lot of free content and things like that. But we have an online academy, and then we also do a lot of live PD and a lot of live training around, and pretty much anything you can think of, from 60 to 90-minute like introduction type sessions to 1-day, 2-day workshops to full district-wide implementations of initiatives that can last, a year, 3 years, 5-year plans, things of that nature. So we do a lot of work with districts and teachers and stuff. I operate as our COO, Chief Operating Officer. The reason, honestly, we just like giving ourselves fancy names like that. I go with COO because I have this vision that one day I'll walk up on a stage and everyone will go, "Coo," like that, like in my call. Hasn't happened yet, but that's pretty much it. So we're a small team, kind of a small family that we work on, and we're just trying to do whatever we can to help support teachers and help them grow, and not to sound to roll too corny with it, but to help them teach better. And it's all about being better today than we were yesterday and better tomorrow than we were today, and going there. So I do a lot of I say behind the scenes, but I'm actually on the camera a lot and stuff too. But I do a lot of the making sure the operations are working well, that we're doing what we need to do and being where we need to be and go from there. So
yeah, and for those of you who have not expose yourself yet to the Teach Better team, do so now. It's pretty phenomenal. And what I really, really, really enjoy about the work you guys are doing is that you don't do it in a silo. I feel like you guys are just branching out and you are connecting to anybody and everybody that has a voice, anybody that can amplify your voice, anybody that is just intrigued or curious about education at all. You guys are tapping into it. Do you mind just talking to us a little bit about the startup of this initiative, Teach Better Team? Because, before we got on today, you wanted to make it very clear that you were never a K-12 teacher. And some people might look at that and say, oh, you've got no credibility whatsoever. But I look at that and say, no, that adds some super credibility to what you're about to say. The transparency and the honesty about that is pretty cool. So Teach Better Team, where did that come from?
So it actually comes from, I wasn't a K-12 teacher. I did spend a couple years at Kent State University as an adjunctive professor. My background is actually in business, more in business. I was in the entertainment industry for a good while, and then the hospitality industry. And then I've been starting businesses of my own pretty much since I was about 17, 18 years old. I've started more than I can even remember at this point. Some have done all right. Some have failed before they even got started. There's literally one that did so bad that I'm still paying for it today. But I wouldn't change a thing because it led me to where I am. So everything got started with, and fair warning, Dave, I don't do short very well. So
You're good, man. Go for it.
So Chad Ostrowski is the guy who started with me. So this all started in Chad's classroom. So Chad was a 7th grade science teacher in Canton, Ohio, Canton City Schools. That's a high need urban population, 100% free and reduced lunch district. And Chad had been doing pretty well there, but started to really struggle. There were some shifts in the district, and he ended up in just a tough situation and started basically having the worst time of his life teaching, and ended up having the worst year of his life is what he'll tell you. And Chad knew he had to fix some problems that were going on in his classroom. He had no student accountability, low achievement. There was just too many gaps in learning. He was having more classroom management problems than he ever had, and essentially got to the point where he said, I either need to stop teaching or I got to figure out how to do this better. He loves teaching, loves being in the classroom, so he started to research it. I credit this a lot. So prior to being a teacher, Chad was actually a scientist in the lab. That's where his career started. Then he went back to the Woodrow Wilson Teaching Fellowship to get his master's because he felt this urge to teach. So I think his scientific mind that he has helped him really dissect his problems, and he went looking for solutions. So he found research, and all the research says that mastery learning should solve all these problems. But he also found that there wasn't a whole lot out there about how to make mastery learning work because it's a little crazy, 30 kids working at their own pace and different things. Like, this isn't what nightmares are made of. So he started researching other pieces of classroom management and time management and organization stuff, and created something that we now call the grid method. And he created that just for necessity for himself. That's actually where everything started. So I'm not sure I don't know when we got connected, but for the first several years of all this, it was just the grid method. It wasn't Teach Better. It was the grid method. It was thegridmethod.com. That's what it was purely that. But we always, from day one, we had this sort of slogan of, are you ready to teach better? And this teach better mindset of completely shifting. It was just under the branding, I guess, of the grid method. And so we started creating content. And so Chad came to me and told me all about it. And he came to me about doing an ebook because I was in that field at the time. And he shared with me, what it had done for his students. And then more importantly, and not necessarily more important, but also what it was doing for him as a teacher and as a father and as a husband, because he wasn't as stressed. He wasn't miserable because that teaching doesn't stay at the school. It goes home with you, right? That kid you couldn't reach, that lesson plan that didn't work. So the changes and the success he was now seeing with those kids was not only a massive impact for him as a teacher, but also as a father and a husband. And so my famous words to him that the team talks about is I was just like, dude, we're not just doing an ebook. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, I don't know, but you're doing something here. We got to share this with people. And I actually told him that night, I said, you're going to change the world. And it's actually our book's coming up, and Chad actually talks about that in the book, how he didn't believe it at that time, but now he does, because the impact that we've been able to see is phenomenal. But so it's all started with the grid method, and we just started creating content and sharing it. And I told him, I said, we're going to share this all out. We need to make sure people can utilize this thing. We created an online course, started going to conferences and presenting. We were getting Chad in front of anyone and everyone we could to just share what he had done. And it started catching on, and we did a couple little things, and we spent the first, probably 14, 15 months or so just working this thing from about 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. He was still, in the classroom. I was running my own business at the time, a marketing agency at the time, and we were just creating content and sharing things out and trying to connect with people. And then we got our first break where we had a district in Ohio that decided they wanted to go full wide and change the way everyone in their district taught, and signed on to do a 3-year plan with us to implement the grid method. We're now going into year 5 with them. We've done way more than the grid method with them now. And that sort of kicked everything off. That also put us in a spot where Chad had to walk away from the classroom in order for us to fulfill it. And that was tough for him, but it was this idea of he has the chance to impact 130 kids every year to now impacting, right. I calculated that he's probably impacting several million at this point. And so that's kind of everything got started. And then eventually we tricked Tiffany to come on and start writing for us and get more involved with it, and bringing her head in, her experience and her knowledge into it, so we could really start challenging the way we were thinking and what we were looking at. And then We got Ray to come on board as well, which is a whole nother story that I'll let her tell you one day about how we checked on that. And that brought another mind in, and we started figuring out that Chad was really, really good at creating trainings for teachers and figuring out how to create trainings and help train on anything, whether he was an expert at it or not. And then we figured out that between Chad and Tiffany and Ray and all these other people we started connecting with, that we had a lot of places that we could pull from and go to a lot of different topics. So we started creating more things. And we have the Teach Further model that Ray created, and we started working with standards-based grading because we also figured out that the grid method is a pretty big shift.
Yeah. And
so some people just need little pieces. So we started creating all these other little pieces, and the grid method as the name just didn't make as much sense anymore because we were a lot more than the grid method. So then we flipped a little over a year ago, we flipped to the Teach Better team, and here we are. So that's the long short of it, I guess.
It's an amazing story. And, just as you're talking, I knew a lot of that, but I'm making some connections to things that people currently in the classroom can probably relate to a little bit. A lot of times in this podcast, I talk about the skills that transcend the classroom. Too often we fixate on just teaching curriculum, just teaching content and getting kids to memorize a bunch of facts. But you, as a businessman, a successful businessman, I'll say, I know that you talk a lot about the failures and how you love talking about failure because it gets you to where you are right now. And that's I'll call it a buzzword right now, talking about the idea of failure, overcoming, and persistence. But it's relevant and it's real. And you got to get people to that place where they're comfortable failing, or that failure is so uncomfortable that they keep pushing through. But you also talk a lot about just living in the moment and taking what you do know and maximizing it. I think it's a powerful story where you talk about Chad and how he was wrestling with something, and I'm sure he's a human being. So at first there was some blame, and it's the kids, it's the district, it's all these other people all the time doing everything right and everybody else is doing everything wrong. But then at some point there was this introspective look where he said, no, I need to teach better. And I think that's the heart and soul of what you guys do, is that you recognize that teachers do matter more than anything else. And if you can help teachers simply get better, that it does change kids' lives and kids' destinies. Yeah. So with all that being said, that's kind of like the foreshadowing. You're a businessman, so I know that there's a bottom line. We're looking at financials and all of that. But how do you know that what you guys are doing is making a difference? How do you know it's making an impact and it's working?
Yeah, so that's been one of probably the funnest thing of this whole thing, is that early on it was tough. We didn't know. We weren't sure. We were putting it out there. We knew, some people were finding the website, were finding the course, but honestly, for the first long while, it was a very small amount of people. And we weren't really sure. Now, obviously, when we're working with districts and stuff, we know what the impact is based on the data they give us. Where we're really seeing it now is when we get the random emails or tweets or Facebook messages from people we've never had a conversation with before, telling us about all their, how they started implementing, last year, and now they've seen this growth or they've seen this. And what's really cool is when we find out, like, it's coming, we have a group of teachers in Oklahoma. I didn't even know anyone in Oklahoma knew what was going on, which is, great. We have a great group out that we're aware of in Moose Lake, Minnesota. Didn't even know that was a place, but they're just doing amazing out there. I had a great conversation yesterday with a teacher in Manila in the Philippines.
Wow.
Who's doing an amazing thing and has seen growth there. And that was a big one for me, because I called Chad after that and I said, hey, just so you know, Manila's literally on the other side of the world, 12 hours difference. It's literally on the opposite side of the world, and we are having an impact over there. I'm like, so just, sleep good tonight, buddy. Like feel good about that. So we really rely a lot on the feedback from teachers. I mean, obviously, like I said, if we work with a district, it's fairly, we can see what they're doing. How's the report card? We have a school in Cleveland who took their state report card from an F to a C. So that's an impact we know. And we're seeing that their algebra test scores have jumped by 41% in their past rate. They were really bad. Now they're pretty okay. But they're seeing these growth. And then we have teachers that are telling us not just the solid data of here's my growth, but also the things that they're recognizing and they're feeling in their classroom. My students just seem to be more ownership. I'm I'm seeing more of, better questions being asked, kids that, would normally be sleeping or playing on their phones, more engaged, things like that. And I think, one of the best things we get is when teachers are like, I'm working harder than I ever have, but like in the best way possible.
Right.
There's a common misconception is that, like, hey, the grid method is just going to make it easy. I'm like, no, it's work, but like it's a different shift of work. So you're working harder because you're bouncing around, but you actually engage with all your students, but your students are going to be working harder than they ever had. So a lot of that comes from how are we doing with that? And then, so from a business standpoint, we, obviously we're looking at things, we look at things like, how much traffic are we getting to the website? How many people are downloading things, taking online courses, and our district's calling us. We have kind of a unique model in that less than 3% of our revenue as a business comes like directly from teachers. So we have some online courses that teachers can buy if they want to on their own. We have a subscription model where they can pay $9 a month and get everything we have on the online course and stuff. And then there's a couple little things on the site like workbooks and stickers and shirts, and the book will be there and stuff like that. But like, that's a very small piece. And honestly, like, I give away free courses all the time. So like, that's just not, because we made a decision early on that we really didn't want to base everything off getting money from teachers, right, who are already underpaid, and spending money on things that they shouldn't have to spend money on. And we wanted to have a positive impact, not a negative pull on the wallet. But we were more than happy to take it from districts, because it's this whole thing, like the money thing. A lot of people have trouble talking about that because they feel this is an industry where you're supposed to be serving, right? And so they're worried about money. But the thing that I always tell Chad is, I said, well, we need that in order to do more things.
Right.
We can't grow and we can't have a bigger impact unless we are surviving and being able to take risk and go to conferences and go do things and create more things. And what I always tell our team is, I said, as long as we are always focused on our mission, which is the end all goal is to impact more kids. As long as we're doing that, I can sleep really, really comfortably at night knowing that we're making money. I said, and the day we stop doing that, we're going to get figured out and they're going to stop paying us. So it doesn't matter. So we just always keep that in the forefront. But measuring that, like, so back to like our weird model is we have, but less than 3%, might be closer to 5% now. We'll call it 5% of our revenue comes from teachers, but about 98% of how we market is to teachers. Mm-hmm. Where actually, like, the people who write us the checks, we don't market a lot to, which is really weird. And a lot of business people would be cringing a little bit at that. But what we found is if you can actually provide value to teachers and you can have them make an impact in their classroom, one, we're already further on our mission. So that's the only thing that really matters. But two, from a business standpoint, it's going to grow organically. That's how it started in Chad's school. It started growing organically. That's how he knew he had something, when he had veteran teachers who were his mentors come to him and say, what are you doing? Because my kids tell me I don't know how to teach anymore. Show me. And then they did it and they said, hey, this actually works. And so it wasn't he didn't go sell anyone. It started the in business lingo, the market told him that it made sense. And so we've always tried to grow everything based on how the market tells us. So what are teachers asking for? What is working or not working? So, it was a long time before we really really gathered the confidence that the grid method would work. We waited for the first, probably 3 years. We were like just waiting for like that one call. It was like, hey, this is the thing that proves that that's a really bad idea. The research was there, but we're like, well, what if, we're at the point now where that's not even a question anymore. I actually told a principal last month, and I don't know if I should say this to anybody, but I was literally told him, I said, look, just so you know, like, we were talking about like the challenges they might face, and he was super excited about it and this, that, and he's like, I just hope we can pull it off. I'm like, well, I'm going to tell you right now, like, we've been everywhere. We've worked with every single kind of teacher you can think of, every single kind of kid you can think of, from one-to-one tech to zero tech to anything you can think of. I'm like, at this point, I'm confident in saying that if this doesn't work, it's your fault. Like, because we're here to support you, obviously we're going to help you fix it and do whatever we can. But like, we're so confident in that it works because of the results we're seeing. Yeah. And we're seeing those results in every subject, across every grade level, in every type of these kids all over the place. And so that's really where we base it, is just sort of the buzz that comes around it and the traffic and stuff. But yeah, I don't know if that answered your question. No, like I said, I don't do short well. I usually just ramble on a little bit, Dave. So
that's all right. So for someone that's never been a quote unquote teacher, you're doing an amazing job teaching right now.
Oh, I do what I can.
No, it's awesome. And again, you're making my mind race. I came with some scripted things I wanted to talk about, but I feel like I want to take these rabbit trails right now because it's
just push that thing off your desk. Let's go down the hole, man. Let's do it.
It's gone.
It's gone. I love it.
So let's just go. I want to talk about the marketing piece a little bit because
sure.
Again, I've heard it said before that the best teachers have to be salesmen. They have to go up there and sell their content. They have to be able to convince people to buy the product, if you will. And I know in the business world, you guys, you monitor engagement. You are constantly looking to see if people are truly interacting with what you're trying to sell and push. And it's the same thing that teachers deal with on a day-to-day basis when they're looking at their clients or the customers in the classroom. So you talk about one of your marketing strategies is really providing free stuff to teachers so that they will then go and say, hey, I need more. And they'll probably go to their district, their principal, their administrator, and say, hey, get us this. And I'm thinking about like Christmas is coming up soon, and advertisers will start doing the same thing to my kids. I've got 4 kids in my house, and my kids will watch these commercials on YouTube or on TV, and they'll come to me and say, hey, Dad, I need you to go get me this. And I've never seen the advertisement before. I've never seen the commercial, but it makes it on the list, and I go buy it. Is that kind of the same mindset that you were just? It's the
same theory. It's the same like thought there. So I want to correct one thing real quick. Is that you said the best teachers are salesmen?
Yeah.
I actually think it's the other way around.
Okay.
I think the best salespeople are actually teachers.
Okay.
In the sense of, if you think about that, what we try and do every day is to educate and provide value to educators.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's the other way around. I think a salesperson who educates their audience, their target audience, in what you're talking about is that. So in that commercial, I'm educating those kids about that. And yeah, I'm selling them, but I'm actually providing them with things. But the company or the brand that educates their customers on what it is that we do, what are we about, what does this does, and what does this bring to your household or your kids or your life, that's the better salesman. Someone who focuses on that versus selling. Okay. So I actually think it's a flip way around. Oh, the correlation's still there, that when you're in front of the classroom, you are selling it, right? And you got to sell the content. But I actually think businesses can take a lot more away from classrooms than vice versa.
Okay.
It's an interesting thing that I've noticed so much. Chad and I do it all the time. Where I'm like, oh, like here's the connection. I see it all the time between a classroom or a school district and a business. I mean, it's all over the place. But yeah, I actually think the best salesmen are actually people who take the time to educate and teach. That's what we do. Right. So we're constantly trying to educate and teach. It's a help versus sell mentality. There's a guy named Matt White who wrote a book called Stop Selling, Start Helping. And we literally live and die by that. That's how we do it. It's all about helping whoever it is that we're trying to work with. And it's that whole, if people know, like, and trust you, they're going to work with you. Which is the same thing that's the same thing in the classroom. Your students have to know, like, and trust you. And if they do, they're going to work a lot harder for you. Right. It's the same thing. Yeah. So in the same right, like it's still accurate that teachers are still selling them and running it like a business and stuff, but I think it's a flip like that. So, that makes so I apologize. I don't remember what your actual question was, but that's where I went with it.
I want to explore the business angle a little bit more. If that's
okay. Yeah, let's do it.
So you mentioned at the beginning of this, I've written books. I go out there and I speak and I present. And there are some people that understand it, and some people simply call it a side hustle. Some people look at it and say, oh, you're just out there trying to make money off of teachers, like you said, these people that are already out there working so hard, or you're trying to brainwash people to do things differently. And I'm curious, have you guys experienced any of that kind of pushback from people who question your intentions, your motivations, and then what's your response?
The response that we try to have is to have a conversation, figure out why they feel that way. And a lot of times it's because they don't understand. They don't know you. They don't understand you. Sometimes it's because they actually wish they could do that, or and a lot of times if you can't. So let me back up. So if you can have a conversation with them and then they can get to know you, and you can get to the point where either they get it and they understand it, or at least they agree to be like civil and move on and stuff, then that's one thing. If they just refuse to and they're like, no, like no matter, you're just giving me lines, like you're just trying to make money, then most likely they're just miserable, and misery loves company. But yeah, we have a lot of people who will question that. They're like, oh, so you're trying to make money off teachers? And I'm like, no, we're trying to help teachers, but I need money to survive, or else we can't do that. Like, that's just a fact. Like, I mean, there's no shame in that. Like, you have to, or you can't do it, right? It's the same reason nonprofits have to go get money. Like, there's no difference between a profit, nonprofit, stuff like that. The difference is when you have to spend your money.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people confuse that. Like, a nonprofit, like, they still make a lot of money. They just have to spend it by the end of the fiscal year. That's all. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
And they don't have to pay as many taxes. But and that was actually early on thing. We'll go down another like offshoot if I can. So the nonprofit profit, we thought we went several times almost down the nonprofit route, but the profit route allows us to have control. Where nonprofit, you are solely dependent on people giving you free money, basically, versus people giving you money because you're doing the right things. And so it's just that control thing. Anyway, that was an offshoot, but yeah, we've had that pushback. We still get it now, as you grow, like as your brand grows, you're going to get it more. We have actually had a conversation last night with a teacher who had posted some things and someone was sort of trolling her, giving her a lot of, just going after her, kind of being attacking her, not super nice about the way they were going about attacking her. And she just happened to send me the tweets that was going on. I'm like, oh yeah, we've actually had interactions with that guy. I said, and sometimes he had, it leads to actually pretty thought-provoking conversations. Sometimes it doesn't. He doesn't always approach things the right way, but I don't know if he's always actually going viciously. I said, but the way he was posting to her, I'm like, I'm pretty sure he's just having a bad day and he wants to take everyone down with him. I said, so that happens. We get that. As we get bigger, we've had people who literally, tweet things out where it's literally just them mocking us. They don't even necessarily say it, but like they use some phrases that we use in a very sarcastic tone, or they'll actually literally say like this was sarcasm. And that happens. That's what it is. My thing is, as long as what you're doing, that what you're doing is for the right reasons and with the right goal, then none of that really matters. You do what you can to have a conversation and share your story with them and your vision with them and what your reasoning for them. Some people are never going to see that, and that's fine. Kill them with kindness and move on. I don't believe in blocking people. Like, it's just not something I do. I'd rather hear that than not. We'll have a conversation and then we'll go on from there. We've had several of those. So, because people will challenge, especially like, the pedagogical stuff too, because it is a big shift. Mm-hmm. Some people don't like it. At this point, I'll argue the grid method against anything and anyone because we have the data. So you can show me any data you want from 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 10 years ago, 4 years ago. I'll show you the data from right now that's working. Now, there's also a lot of research that says mastery learning works, but we have the data from the grid method in schools that we are working with, and we're seeing that growth. So, when you get to that point, like at this point, like you really couldn't shake me on that. However, I still encourage it because I want to see it so we can think through and go, hey, is this something we should look into? Because he does have a good point here and it doesn't look like it's working. So it's a tough thing. That's probably one of the hardest things when you start putting yourself out there. I think especially as a teacher, because like I said earlier, it's such a serving industry where you're serving these kids and, you're supposed to, do it. You're basically supposed to love it so much that you basically do it for free, which you kind of do based on pay. But right. But like and I actually think that's part of the reason why that is what it is. Because everyone just goes, oh yeah, but you're a teacher. You love kids. So you'll do it for pennies, right? Yeah, of course you will. And I think that conversation is starting to change and I hope so. But I think because of that internally as teachers often think, well, I'm supposed to just love this. So like I shouldn't be trying to make money. I shouldn't be trying to do it. It's like, well, no, like that's okay. One, it's okay to make some money to help your family. And two, it's okay to make some money if you're helping other people. Yeah. I mean, it's okay to make money generally. We live in a capitalist society. Like we're supposed to do that. My thing is, as long as what you're doing is you're doing for the right reasons and you're not like intentionally harming people, like it's perfectly fine. You're okay. As long as you're being transparent, you're talking to people, you're doing that stuff, you're willing to walk away if you're not the right fit for that person. I think that's one of the biggest issues in business is too many businesses will take your money no matter what. We've walked away from quite a bit of money because the district thought they were ready and they weren't. There's actually one in particular I was telling someone about actually yesterday or the day before, and I'm like, this was a big deal that literally would have changed everything for us. And we walked away because they mentioned some things that they needed to work on. And we're like, yeah, you know what? This is going to work a lot better if you sort that stuff out first. Here's some ideas that we literally sold them out of us. Like, which right now I'm kind of like, oh, that was dumb. But it was the right thing to do. And, at somewhere down the line, they'll come back to us, and I think it'll be an awesome deal. It'll be great. We'll have a massive impact on kids. But right now they had to take care of things. And I think too often people try and sell just to anyone that'll buy. And I don't think that's right. Like, you need to be transparent. You need to be honest about what you're doing, why you're doing it, so that people can make the right decision and work with you. And if that's the case and you're doing that, and what you're doing is right for the kids or whoever you're doing it for, then sleep easy at night because you're okay. That's my opinion. And, if that doesn't work, hate is going to hate, right? So that's what it all comes down to. I mean, there's always going to be people that are mad. And I don't know if you follow Gary Vaynerchuk at all, Gary V, but one thing he always says is if someone takes time to consume your content and then takes the extra 3 to 4 minutes to write crap to you, like, how bad is their life? Right? Like, don't be mad. Like, feel some empathy for them because they're probably miserable. That's it. So now I also want to mention there are a lot of people who will challenge you, like, but with actual challenge. And there's some people out there that we've had challenge where someone's like, oh, that person's trolling. I'm like, they're not trolling us. They're a little harsh when they approach the conversation. But if you engage them, they're actually having a really, really thought-provoking conversation. Yeah. And they've brought up some really great points. Like, and they're actually willing to walk away. A lot of times it's agree to disagree, but even that's fine. Like, let's have a conversation. And so we try to engage in that stuff. I think I never recommend blocking. Don't block people. Just have the conversation with them. It's okay to walk away from the conversation, but unless they're being nasty.
That's good wisdom. I mean, too often in our world today, we put our blinders on and say, I'm just going to live in my bubble. I'm not going to listen to any other perspective.
No.
That's kind of why we find ourselves in the positions we are so often. So I think that's helpful advice.
Yeah, and there's a very real challenge issue, whatever you want to call it, of echo chambers of just, I'm going to go out here and talk about it. And sometimes you need that to kind of reinforce, give you some positivity, give you some motivation, inspiration to get through a tough day or tough week. But you also need those things that challenge you. You need that stuff that makes you go, well, wait a minute, maybe I'm not on track. Maybe I really need to rethink this thing. So I think you need a little bit of both. And just, be transparent, have the conversations.
That's good. I want to talk about the conversations you have because you are visible everywhere. I mean, you got the podcast that you and Ray do, and just, I think it was episode 103 or 104 or something like that just came out, but it's been out just over a year. So you're releasing a couple of podcast episodes a week, typically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have a book coming out next week.
Next week, Wednesday the 25th. Yep.
That's out there. You guys are all over social media, Twitter and Facebook. And I mean, you name it, you guys are out there. What is the single greatest impact you guys are having right now? Where do you see people really connecting with you guys? Is it the face-to-face still? Is it through the podcast? Where do people find out about you guys?
I think right now, honestly, we have a private Facebook group. That's, open to anyone, but it's private. So you just got to, ask to get in. That has really just grown and been phenomenal. We've seen a great growth of it this year. We're adding another, 150, 200 people every month. Teachers from all over the country, all over the world, actually, and every different grade level, every different position, all over the place that are sharing there's a lot of good methods shared in there, but there's a lot of other stuff too. And just this really great community of, I'm struggling with this, or I need ideas on this, or I'm confused about this, and this community coming together. So our team's in there, but so often, probably more often than not, by the time we get to a question that's in that group, 6 people have already answered it. And it's already done. We're just like, hey, all that looks good. Thanks. Which is awesome because we've built this community. We've had a lot of teachers tell us that Facebook group is saved my week, or that made me get there. So I think single greatest impact as far as impacting teachers, I think that's a great spot. We get a lot of connection. Twitter's a big spot for us. We do Mastery Chat on Thursday nights, #Mastery Chat. And that was a great one for us that really grew well and really connected to a lot of people. The podcast has been doing very well for the last year, and that's been a really cool piece. But I think the big piece is all of it together, which, it's all – I'm going to try to say this right. It's all very intentionally organic, if that makes sense. We've been very intentional about surrounding you, in a sense of when you get into our world, whether it's via blog, video, podcast, online course, see us at a conference, whatever it might be. we're now going to be everywhere so that you can access what we're doing anywhere.
Yeah.
Because you might be a reader, but you might like video, but you also you might be an audio person. You might be looking for an online course. Maybe you love live PD, but maybe you want a book. Like, so all these things come together so that we're trying to be everywhere we can be for people to consume it. And from a marketing standpoint, it's very intentional and it's a great marketing strategy. From a mission standpoint, it's working because we're able to connect with people and impact them and therefore impact the kids that way.
Yeah.
But I think our two biggest impact, Twitter has just always been a great spot. I think Twitter's just a great spot right now for educators.
Mm-hmm.
And then that Facebook group is really, really just been a great spot. We've seen so much just positive activity in there and impact, like direct impact to a classroom and there for sure.
So good. And again, I'm going to make some translations for people in the classroom, and correct me if this analogy doesn't work either.
No.
I mean, you're talking differentiation, really. You've got this focus, and you have a common mission, common focus, and you're saying, I'm going to reach out to as many different mediums as possible to reach as many different people on this common mission, on this common vision, which is what we ask teachers to do. But I think you take it to the next level where, I mean, you're an outlier here because you do have this social media background, the marketing business background, and you are perfectly capable of all of this. But you also understand that your voice might not be the only voice people need to hear. So you've got Ray involved, you've got Chad involved, you've got all these different people involved, bringing their voices to the conversation. Realizing that your students, if you will, might just need to hear it through a different lens. And it's powerful. You're modeling effective teaching and effective pedagogy through your craft. And
the differentiation is spot on, and didn't mean to interrupt you, but there was a great point in that the most effective differentiation is not one that's actually planned, but it's one that's formed from listening in your classroom and actually like understanding your students. And everything we've created has come from listening to our audience, right? Teachers, of where do you want us to be? What are you looking for? So like our Facebook group has really gotten a lot of value out of, we've been doing these free PD series where we come on for an hour and we do a PD session live on in our Facebook group. That came from our Facebook group reaching out, us saying like, hey, what do you guys need? And they're like, free PD. And we're like, done. Right. People, the audience, the market, if you will, it started shifting and podcasts started becoming a thing. So we're like, hey, we should do this. Yeah. Everything we've done with the course, something like that, it's all been from listening through that. And then there was another piece and I lost it. So go on with what you were saying.
It's so good.
The other piece of that.
I think, I
got it. I'm going to interrupt you again. So no, the multiple voices. I just love you going there because I love sharing this, that we do have multiple voices. And here's what I love about that is that here's how I kind of look at our team, like how they kind of present and work with. So Chad's kind of like hey, you're doing it wrong. Let me fix you. Right. That's just kind of his mentality. I mean, he's a big, lovable, he's not big anymore. I call him big because he used to be a big guy, but he's lost 100 pounds. So he's a little guy now. But like Chad's just a little more like, there's no fluff with Chad. He's just like, look, like this is how it is. The research says it. The data says it. Let me help you fix this. Right. Yeah. Tiffany, we call him Tiff, Mama Tiff, because she's kind of like, oh, come here, sweetie. Like mastery learning isn't that scary. Technology isn't scary. Mama Tiff's got you. I'm going to help you out. Right. And then Ray, I always say Ray is kind of like, come on, we're jumping on my magical unicorn of a magic carpet and we are going to teach. And you're just like, I'm not a teacher, but I'm going to go teach today. Like, and you just get excited. And that's just kind of Ray. And then I think I bring the, hey, let me show you what it looks like from over here. Because I'm not a teacher. So let me see what I see. And maybe that can help you. And I think, like you said, we have the different voices where people can, they're gonna gravitate to, hopefully all of us, but they might gravitate to Chad's delivery more than Ray's, or Ray's more than Tiff's, or Tiff's more than mine, or whatever it might be. And I think that also, it's another differentiation. So I love that the connection you made there, because I don't know if I ever actually thought about it that way. So that's a really cool connection, though.
Well, it is. It's kind of cool because what I've really enjoyed about the last couple of episodes, and this one in particular, is that in education, I think sometimes we exist within our silo. And we're so worried about first grade preparing kids for second grade and second grade preparing kids for third grade. Yeah, we say our larger mission is to prepare kids for life, but we forget that life exists outside of schools. And I think we do a great job of preparing the next generation of teachers to go out there and be teachers. But the world is so much bigger than just being a teacher. And I don't want to say just being a teacher. I mean, I'm a teacher, so it's not just being a teacher. Yeah. So many more other opportunities out there. And what we're seeing is that the real world exists where there's differentiation. You have to understand how to speak different languages to different people at different times. You have to understand not just how to use technology, but how to use technology for a purpose. I mean, it's so relevant and it's so powerful. If we step outside of schools for a little bit, if we step outside of our classrooms, we can understand truly what the world looks like for the kids that we're trying to help create these destinies. So, I really appreciate your voice and amplifying this a little bit.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, and that world looks a lot different than it did when we were younger.
Yeah, absolutely.
It looks a lot different than it did 5 years ago.
Right.
And that's that's the hardest. That's one of the hardest parts about what teachers have to do is you're trying to prepare them for a world that is not the same world.
Yeah.
It's not a world that you can even honestly. I'm thinking about my son who's in second grade in 16 years when he's graduating. I can't even fathom what that world looks like.
Right.
I literally can't. It's impossible. No one can. Well, maybe, I don't know, maybe Elon Musk can, but you know what I mean? It takes that kind of a mind to even be able to try and imagine what that is. And so that's a tough job.
Absolutely.
It moves a lot faster now than it did in 1980.
Yeah, it's so true. So I'm in my 20th year right now in education, and my job is I basically supervise principals and teachers. I'm a curriculum director, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I started my career teaching middle school, and I had a couple of 8th grade classes. My oldest son is an 8th grader right now. And when he comes home sometimes at the end of the day and tells me the stuff that he's doing in class, and it's the same stuff that I did as a teacher 20 years ago, I cringe. Back then it was cutting edge and it was amazing, but we're 20 years in the future now. And I just hope and I pray that my youngest kid is in preschool right now, that by the time he gets to 8th grade, people have caught on to the evolution. So I just encourage you and your team to go out there and keep sharing this and be those missionaries to get people to jump on board to truly teach better in this evolving world, because
that's one of the driving forces. We all have. Well, Ray's the only one who doesn't have young kids. She's got dogs, so they count, but they won't go through the school system like normal. But I think about that all the time. Is I don't want my kids to go through the same system I did, and I had great experiences from my school. I had a great school, great teachers and stuff, but I don't want my kids to have that same thing. So there's a big driving force that is creating helping to impact education so that it's better for our kids and then obviously for everyone else's too. So yeah, it's a big piece of it.
Now, do your kids' teachers know what you do?
No, actually my daughter's does, but that's because she had my son too. And I know the conversation there. I don't know if she would remember the conversations after. I know some of them do. I've had the conversations. I try not to be too, but I do get a little bit, when they say they're standards based, but it's really just reporting, not instruction and things like that. So I try not to be a pain or anything like that, but I think some of them do. Some of the parents and stuff do, but we're working on that.
I feel that pain. 4 kids. I'm not allowed to open parent-teacher conferences. I go and I listen. I process. I take notes.
It's got to be tough. It's tough, but yeah.
But your kids have to come first, and you don't want to make life difficult for them. So
yep.
So what's next? We got the book, and these are all just ways to amplify your voice, if you will. Mm-hmm. What is next for you personally, or the Teach Better team? What's the next big thing?
Well, so we've got the book's out. So the book's out, and the conference is coming in November. That's a big one for us. That was kind of a, hey, let's see if we can do this. Kind of a thing that came along, and we decided to go for it. And that's an exciting one because if it does well, the goal this year is to build that foundation so that we can do it bigger and better next year and start, create something here. And then,
you guys have some amazing speakers coming in.
We have some amazing speakers coming out. I'm going to rattle a few of them off. So Dave and Shelley Burgess are both coming out. And that's just because Dave and Shelley are awesome, and Dave is coming, and Shelley's like, he doesn't get to have all the fun. I'm coming too.
Well,
I'm like, heck yeah.
That they are in Hawaii. They're in Hawaii right now. So they're leaving Hawaii to come to Ohio in the fall. Just know that. So
I know. Yeah, it's just I'm good like that, Dave. No, Dave and Shelley are amazing. That's who we're releasing the book with, and they're just phenomenal. I consider them both to be good friends at this point, and just good people. But and then Adam Welcome is coming out. Adam we met a couple years ago, and has been a mentor in a lot of different ways, and I consider him a good friend. And he reached out and was like, hey, it's your first year, man. Let me be a part of it. Let me help you out. And is coming out. And then Tal Thompson. I don't know if you know Tal Thompson.
Yep.
But Tall Tal, I don't know when we connect with him, but like, he's just one of the coolest dudes I've ever met. And he's super tall. He's like really tall in real life. Chad and I were lucky enough. We went through Virginia, and a mix of travels a few weeks back, and we ran through. We made a sort of a swing to the left to hit Charlottesville and hung out with him for a little bit. So we're super excited to have him come up, and Tara Martin's coming out, and we've got the list goes on, and we're super excited. We've got 62 speakers, people presented across the 2 days. We actually ended up moving things around so we could have more people out. So we're super excited about it. So that's definitely a big piece. The book, we're going to see what happens. We've got several other books that we've been working on that, so there will be more books coming from either from individually on the team, or from, maybe a couple of us, or we have some other people outside of the team that we really want to do writing with and stuff. That's that. And then, honestly, it's just continuing to grow things. We have something else in the works that I don't know if I'm going to say just yet, but when's this come out?
I'll re-release it later on too, so you're fine. I'll release it.
Yes.
Go for it.
So something we're working on that's probably going to come out in the first quarter of 2020 is when we're going to start. That we're already working behind the scenes is actually a speakers bureau and representing educators that want to grow their brand and share their message. Something that we figured out is that's like what we've done with Chad's, as we call it, Chad's silly little idea. The impact is phenomenal, and there's so many educators that have things like that that just haven't thought about putting it out yet, or don't know how to, or can't because they're in the classroom 50 hours a week. And we have the infrastructure to do that. We have a passion to do that. We have a know-how on how to do that, and we want to help amplify their voices and their message and get that out and increase our impact all together. When we switched the brand and we were changing to Teach Better, it was interesting. We had everyone in, we flew Ray in and Michelle down and stuff. And we were looking at the changing the handles for our social media, and Teach Better wasn't available. And we're like, no, it's got to be the same thing on all across the board and this, that, and we're looking. And I'm like, it looks like Teach Better Team's available on all of them. They're like, oh, well, maybe, yeah, that. And Chad goes, no, that makes sense because we're the Teach Better Team, but like all teachers are the Teach Better Team. Yeah. And we all just went, whoa, dude, that's deep. but that's how we look at it, because we're like, we have our team that's like, we've signed agreements, but it's everyone like that, that entire group. Like Chad calls it Teach Better Nation, but like it's all Teach Better Team. So like, that's sort of, we're like, okay, how can we make our team bigger officially and have a more direct impact on individual teachers' impact where we're at? What can we do? And we're like, well, maybe we help them build their brands by helping represent them and help them spirit. And I gotta give credit. It was Adam Welcome that, I was talking to him about speaking the agent, stuff like that. He's like, dude, you guys should just do that for people. Like, you've got what you need. So that's the next big thing that I'm really excited about that. So my background, actually, oddly enough, how I met Chad was actually I managed Chad's band back in the day. So I had a record label that I started called FTF Records that I did for. I talked briefly about it in the book, but
this is the one you're still paying for, right?
No, that's not. Actually, no, that's a whole other one. So the record label, and I did end up closing it due to just where the industry was, some mistakes made and stuff like that. But Chad and I met there, so I had a record label for about 8 years or something like that I had it. And so I come from that. So like that management piece and doing that. So I found what I was in bands. I was the front man in bands. So I was the lead singer. So I was always like, the front face. And then when I started managing bands, I realized that I didn't need to be that person. I was okay being, the guy behind the curtains, right? I loved seeing other people go after their dreams and having a part of that. And so I love the idea of helping a teacher who's like, I've got this idea and I really want to share it, but I don't know how, and have an impact. And they're like, well, let us help you. And so that's a big piece. I'm personally really excited about that one. Kind of goes to my roots in a lot of ways. And I think it's going to be able to allow us to have a massive impact in a lot of different ways. So we've got a couple people that are already on board for that we're going to be represented, that I'm not going to say right now. That'll be more like a January, February thing, but that's coming. Some more details coming for that. And then we're doing some cool work we got a cool smaller scale, but I think super impactful conference that we're working on with the group over the team over at Otis. If you don't know Otis, they're an awesome concept or learning management software that do really great. I don't know why I couldn't get those words out. And we're putting on a sort of a organized ed camp type conference with them in the spring as well in Cleveland. So super excited about that. And then it's just a whole lot of trying to create more content and get things more out there. You know, Ray gets upset, but I want to do more podcast episodes. We realized early on we were so worried about like running out of guests and running out of episodes. And now it's like, we're booked right now, like until like through February of guests, you know, doing 3 or 4 a night every Monday. And so I'm like, there's a lot of teachers we haven't talked to. Like, it's going to take us a long time. So we really want to, I think the podcast is really going to be a big focus. And then we'll see where it takes from there. It's a lot of just listening to our audience, listening to what people need, and then doing what we can within those needs.
So good. I live in the world of metaphors and parables, but I picture you guys walking around with sledgehammers, just knocking down walls and then handing people a megaphone saying, "Wall's been knocked down. I'm going to amplify your voice for you." That's kind of like what you guys do. And it's powerful because teachers do have a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom, but we are trained to keep our mouths shut. Don't stir the pot. Don't fix what ain't broke. Just go in your classroom and close your door. But that's what causes the stagnation. It's what causes the status quo. So from the outside in, I think you guys are doing some powerful work by coming from the outside saying, here, let me lend you that helping hand.
Yeah.
Let us help you be that change agent within your school, within your system, within your classroom. And then we'll just grow together. We'll stand beside you. And you guys practice what you preach. I mean, you talk about Dave and Shelley Burgess, for example. I mean, you guys have formed this partnership. They're publishing the book. They are coming to the conference with you guys. It's not just you guys doing things on your own. You're branching out and helping others join in as well. It's powerful.
Yeah, not to sound cliche, but we're all in this together. So it's all about bringing it together. I've always been that way. I've never looked at anyone as competition in anything I've ever done. I always look at how can we both work together to find a mutual relationship. So even if we do the exact type of like another podcast, like technically your podcast is a competition to my podcast if you want to look at it that way. But I never look at it that way. I'm like, all right, how can we help each other grow more? Because that just means there's more content out there, there's more value out there, and more teachers are going to be hit with whatever it is that they're looking for. So it's the same thing when it comes to this. And so I love that we have these connections, all these different, there are these little, I don't know if pockets is the right word, but like pockets or like PLNs that get more exclusive based on certain groups and stuff. And I don't think it's intentional on those groups. It just sort of happens that way. And I love when we can connect those and bring people together and stuff like that, because that's when we're most powerful. And as far as teachers in the classroom stuff, Chad is always saying, for every problem we have in education, there's a solution somewhere in a classroom. Right. We just haven't found it yet. And so, a lot of what we're doing is trying to find those solutions and trying to fix those things. And, I talked earlier about my confidence in the grid method, but that does not mean that the grid method doesn't change every time we find out an awesome new thing. Yeah. So we're always learning constantly. Ray will tell you the best PD she ever has is doing the podcast, because we get to talk to all these amazing people and stuff. So when we're all in together, it's all about bringing down, trying to lift voices and trying to just share those things, because those solutions are there. So
good. That's so good. And, I'll talk about your podcast one more time. Your podcast gets me through many a Saturday long run. So I appreciate it.
Nice.
You guys make me chuckle. You make me think. You make me just get lost in a happy place when my feet.
Well, good. Well, when I hear Ray's voice, I try to run away too. But so I appreciate that a whole lot. That means a lot to me. The podcast thing is a lot of fun. And I pick on Ray, but it's a blast. I'm so glad that when we originally brought that to the team, they rightfully were like, hey, like probably not a good idea. We're already always talking about how we don't have time to do anything. It's like, oh yeah, you're right. Let's put it on the back burner. Because I had a podcast before in my past life. So Chad and I knew we would do it eventually, but they were like, not the right time. And then like Ray couldn't shake it. And I was the same way. And she texted me. She's like, hey, like, I still think we should do the podcast. And I'm like, all right, here's the deal. I'm like, we can do it. I said, but no one else has to do anything ever. It cannot burden anyone else. I said, and we are never, ever, ever allowed to complain about it to anyone except ourselves, about you and me. And she's like, all right, deal. And So then we took a team. We're like, hey, so we're going to do this anyway. Here's the logo. Here's the name. We've already booked 17 guests. We're ready to go. And they're like, all right. So I'm glad we did that because it's a blast. And yeah, we're at 100 and some episodes right now, which is really cool. And we've got a whole lot more educators to talk to. So
good. It's good.
Yeah,
you talk about the need to establish trust so that people will buy into the product, if you will. And I think that does it. That for me is what gets me hooked. You know, I'm a part of the Facebook group. I mastery chat on Thursdays and follow you guys all over the place. But that podcast is what makes it all relatable and it reminds me that you guys are just real people living lives, and that's where the magic is. So I appreciate.
I tell you that the podcasts are powerful like that. I mean, when someone puts you in their ears, like that's a thing. Like they're making a big decision. I've spoken a couple times to business folk about doing podcasts, and I'm like, look, when they go on a website, well, first off, websites, this is a staggering number, but it's 92% or 80, I don't know, it's upper 80s or lower 90% of people who come to your site will spend less than 50 seconds on your site. So you're getting less than a minute. Most of them are spending less than 10 seconds on your site. They're seeing what they want, and bouncing off.
Yeah.
And I say, they're out of sight, out of mind. But in your ears, like they're there. So when you're I say in your head, never dead, right? Because when they're in there, like I'm choosing to consume you in my head. It's just different than when I choose to read what you wrote, because it's your voice. And when you're laughing and goofing around, stuff like that, yeah, it's all about that. That's just that. It's been a really effective way of building the trust and stuff like that. So I love when we had an instance when I was at a school. We were at a school with a district we were about to start working with, and we were there doing the training. And we were at the middle school of the district, and the middle school was and this was back in spring, was getting a new principal for this year because the principal was retiring. And the incoming principal would just happen to be there visiting for the day. And the superintendent's like, oh, dude, Jeff, I got to bring this guy down and meet you. And I'm like, oh, that would be great. Of course, we want to meet the principal for a school we're going to be working with. I didn't realize the reason it was because this guy loves the podcast. And he came in, and he's like, yeah, he shook a hand. He's like, yeah, I've actually listened to every episode of Teach Better Talk. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Like, thanks for listening. Da-da. We walked away, and the superintendent's like, dude, you don't understand. That was like a moment for him. Like, what do you mean? He's like a huge fan of you and Ray and the podcast. I'm like, oh, like, that's awesome. Like, it's just so cool to know that you have this relationship. Because then you meet someone, you're like, oh, yeah, like, you feel like you know me because we're in a podcast. And yes, that is me. Like, I really am a jerk like that to Ray all the time. Like, so, like, did that, which we had a incident of that where Mike Muhammad was walking behind us at a conference, and we were picking at each other, and he's like, huh, so it's not just for the podcast. You guys are really like that. And we're like, yeah, it's really just how we are. So, yeah, I love it, man. The podcast is a blast. I know you love it too. Obviously, you're feeling the same thing. So
that's awesome.
It's a good time.
So good. Well, I'm going back. I'm looking at my notes right now, and actually did not hit much of anything in my notes. Awesome though. But
good success.
Yeah, right. This conversation was so good for me. I feel like I just picked up so many nuggets of truth and wisdom in all this. So to wrap it all up, if you have a 30-second little elevator speech, what do educators, parents, people in the world need to know? What do we need to do to get better? You talk about teach better. What do we just need to do to get better, to open up those doors and grow?
Be willing to change. Is I think the most important thing is self-reflection and understanding that you're not perfect. You're never going to be perfect, and that's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
Like, it's all right. And that sounds cliche because it's, like you said, it's kind of a hot button, the fails thing. But the biggest thing is to actually live by that and realize that it's okay. Yeah. And that, being willing to have those conversations and say, it's all right if I don't believe you, I'm still going to listen to you. If I don't actually think the same way, let's have a conversation. Let's consider this. And this is another cliche. The most dangerous thing in the world to say is that's how we've always done it. Mm-hmm. And you just can't do that. You have to think through, that's great, but how can I do something better today? Or how am I challenging myself today to be better? And that might be a really, really small thing. And you may not always be able to think of something that you can do, and that's okay too. But if you're always thinking that way, that's the biggest thing. And to do what we try to tell our students is, when you do have a failure or a struggle, like, figure out why that happened and how you can learn from it. I think that's the biggest piece. And then, and me personally, is just connect with people. I think that your relationships in your life are the most important thing. I think they far, far, far outweigh any degree you can ever get. The education you can get from just having connections, and the power of having connections to people is, I think, unbelievable. And then, I think just focusing on what your kids need to learn. But the biggest piece is being willing to change, and then being okay with admitting, like, I was doing that wrong. I'm going to do it this way now.
Absolutely.
That's the biggest piece. And then, of course, obviously the best way to do it is to buy the book that's out right now and listen to Teach Better Talk and come to the conference and everything. No, I think that's the biggest thing. So
that's awesome. No, so good. I appreciate that. It's, again, wisdom. It sounds like it's common sense, but if it were, we wouldn't have to say it. So,
well, the problem with common sense in a lot of those things, it's the action. So we can say all we want, but if you're not taking action on it, then it doesn't matter. Like that's a big focus of our conference. Is I hate that most conferences, it's 2 to 3 days of getting pumped up and it's awesome stuff, and then nothing happens.
Yeah.
And so we've got a few things in place for our conference that we're really focused on, more or less forcing you to take action, because otherwise it's a waste of time and money, and you don't have enough time and money to come waste it with us. So I think that goes into the day-to-day. Like it's one thing to say things and hear things to make yourself feel better, but you got to go get that, and your PLN and accountability will help you do that. So
good. So good.
Yeah.
Well, Jeff, I just want to say thank you again for giving up time out of your busy day, because you got a lot going on, man, and sharing some wisdom with us, talking about what you do, where you're doing it, why you're doing it, and again, just how we can all grow and get better. So those of you listening, again, go buy that book, listen to that podcast, sign up for that conference, get excited.
Come on the podcast. Get on the podcast. If we haven't had you on the show, message me. I'm at Jeff Gargas on Twitter. Get me. Let's get you on the podcast.
There you go. Get your voice amplified, guys. It's available. He threw it out there. So again, I appreciate it. I'm sure we're going to be connecting again really, really soon. But for the rest of you out there, get connected with this guy. He's awesome.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate you letting me come on here and amplifying my voice and our team's voice and what you're doing and everything you got going on. And congrats again on the book and all your work. And I'm sorry that you're from Michigan. And to bring it full circle
right now.